Ini day ke-7 guys, dari segini tebal, udah tinggal segini lagi. Wow. Okay everybody, today we gonna continue our reading on chapter 5, page 111. Structural approach, tactic to reach the goal. Once upon a time, direct and cult arts teacher Alexander McCreary in his book on filmmaking showed the value of those traditional bedtime story plays, such as Once Upon a Time. He showed how the stock plays illustrate dramatic structures. One called Conceivable create a Mad Libs to invent new story. Mad Libs were children's book, published by Princeton Sloan on a short story with many of the keywords, replaced by blank and instruction to replace the blank with a name, verb, and adverb. The resulting story were generally comical and surreal. Once upon a time, in name of place, they leave name of hero who want name of object, but can't get it because of name of villain of obstacle. But one day, description event, cause result of action, but meanwhile, what this demonstrated is that almost any content can fill the blank of a story, but it's how this piece fit together that make it structural dramatic. The basic structure is that a conflict is presented that leads to inevitable confrontation and climax, and then resolution. Each piece of the structure is required for the whole to work, or it will feel like something is missing. Let's quick recap what we have covered so far. We watch a movie for many reasons, but mostly we feel good. We will have to direct the audience attention to one idea at a time using the speaking metaphor. Don't forget punctuation. The audience needs time to process information. Give them pauses. Keep the audience attention with the intriguing narrative question, and then tease them by delaying the answer. Build story complexity by hierarchical network or narrative question that keep your audience guessing. The structural approach to direct is based on what the audience is doing as they watch a movie. We want to give them an emotional, satisfying experience. To do that, we aim to the heart by working of the structure. What follows is the beginning of a chart that will describe the tools that you will be able to use to work at the structural level. When used correctly, this tool will help you keep the structure invisible and your viewer lost in the direction. Each the following chapter of the book will add specific structure, technique, and tool for making the story clear and dramatic. The charts present the information sequentially. However, the mind processes all levels of this information unconsciously faster than we can think. Wait, this is outside how we think. We are not just aware how much mental processing goes on outside of our awareness. Our consciousness is just the tip of a great iceberg. In the beginning, when you story and the direct, there is so much to keep in mind. This will feel overwhelming. It is like when you first tried riding a bicycle, you climb on the bike unsure of what will happen. You shift your weight and press of the pedal. The bike starts to move. You probably wobble all over the place and maybe even fall a few times. Over time and with practice, you learn to ride smoothly. You learn to stop and go when you choose to. You learn to steer where you wish to go, and I am sure it felt really good. Now, with the practice to master this structural storytelling skill, I am sure you will be smoothly telling stories. Our goal here is to lead all of this skill and then forget them and work intuitively. You will use this technique again when it's time to analyze your story to fix problem and make it more dramatic and clear. Charts of story event and structure. The event, what is going to happen next in the story. The threshold of awareness divides what the audience pay attention to into what we notice and what we don't. We usually don't pay attention to what is below the line unless something catches our attention by being out of the place. Structure is how the story is told. Through narrative question, delay, and answer using the speaking metaphor to show one idea at a time. Let's make this a little more understandable, so we can learn to utilize this approach as a tool. In order to do that, I am going to show you a story. Man with a String. Some people say that the audience doesn't hear background movie in the movie. That is why they call it background music. If the music there, why can't they hear it? Let's say this rope is threshold of awareness. Since we pay attention to the only one thing at a time, we don't notice everything below the rope of threshold. Let's the story begin. Teacher 1. Do you hear music? I think it's coming from down there. What are you doing? Oh no, you crossed the threshold. I think I broke the story. The growth line in the threshold of attention. The puppets are the characters involved in the story event. We watch they are entertained by antics until one puppet notices something out of place and calls attention to it. The curtain is cut aside and the illustration is destroyed, just like the Great Wizard of Oz. This is exactly what happens when we watch a film. We enjoy an analytic of the character until something happens to make it us aware of the structural level of the illusion of being lost in the story is destroyed. Most often, we become aware of the structural level because the filmmaker has done something wrong. It can be a little problem like continuity error, or it can be a big problem like the fact that the story might be boring. Either way, we are bumped out of the story, and that certainly doesn't make the audience feel good. We watch story to feel good, but also to learn the story is about the little puppet Shogunari. But it's also a story to make a point about focusing the audience attention on the narrative question of the story event. Scott Kaiser continued wearing her spell on the Sultan, using every trick in the book. So far, her plan is working since he is keeping his attention on the event of the story. He wants the narrative question answered. The story continues. Daisy and Wade search for their friend Clover. Clover! Wade stops Daisy to look. Clover lost talk. Daisy, Clover! But what happened to Go? Scrasable spells and finished the drawing. She holds up the drawing for the Sultan to see. Go still hang up by the thread, or actually sticks teeth. Suddenly, a hook reaches out and picks them up. They are carried off. Clover can turn away. With she's swelling for my coat, this can't be. The Sultan waits for the next drawing. She smiled at her idea. She also scratched each end. Clover saw shoot from the cocktail. She put the finishing touch of the drawing and held up to the view. The Sultan laughed. Scratchable is puzzled. The drawing isn't funny. She looked back. The driver pointed to her cheek. Scratchable turned to look in the mirror. She see what they are looking at, and noticed the Sultan is staring at her. She smiled. Well, Go and Stick have been saved from the break of Scratchable's screen by warming the Sultan to be warming up to the Sultan. The crocodile smooch bring it a bit of levity to the town's situation. The Pandaloni house swung to open. Let's see for how long. Critic developing character relationship. The crocodile on Scratchable is out of place. Instead of being on drawing, it takes them out of the dumb love story temporarily. But with research to reveal character relationship in Scratchable's story, she is a little less uptight. It shows she is letting her guard down and that the Sultan is warming up to her. We are involved with the character and what they are going through. We are lost in the story, not paying attention to the cutting, staging, composing, and all the choice of storytelling. Point to remember, I'm the heart by working at a structural level to create narrative delight that keep the audience guessing. Keep the structural invisible. Don't call attention to it or you will create a hole in your story. What do directors direct? Page 190, chapter 6. Event of the story. Threshold of awareness is being held up by two structural. The first structural called work here, structural level. The second structural have a word director direct attention. We began our chart at the beginning. As we learned earlier, the first thing the director has to do is capture and direct the audience attention. Don't worry, you don't have to be a wizard to do this. Wait, maybe you do. Let's look at some way to direct attention. Try this experiment. Do not think of the spotted elephant. In order to complete the task, first you have to imagine an elephant. Then you have to add spot because elephants are not usually spotted. Finally, you can try to not to think of it. It is paradoxical thing that, by definition, cannot be done. But we have direct your attention to do something we told you not to pay attention to. Why should we care about spotted elephant? What if we were on the trial and the prosecutor lies and said that he heard that you were seen at the scene of a crime holding a knife? The judge tells the jury of discard command. What does the jury do? They acknowledge that they are not paying attention to the remark. But what has happened in their mind? Yes, the jury has already constructed in their mind a picture of a defendant holding a knife on a skin. Or another example, what if a movie condemns violence yet portrays violence act? Condemning I have continued to talk about clarity, but there are times when call up to dose of ambiguity. We won't control ambiguity too much and spoil the show. We still need to be clear but leave room to the audience to puzzle over the exact meaning of what they see. An excellent example of what is called for is when we want to withhold from the audience whenever a character is guilty or not. In director Ju Rat's Tournament, Bria Twilight, a young girl who wished to become a storyteller, sees an event but she misinterprets what it means. It is also when the audience is shown the event from another point of view, do they understand the significance of the event and the consequences of predatory distortion. Director Alan Plain played with this idea in this film, La Ya Alma Bienba. When a man is trying to convince a woman that they met last year at the hotel, she apparently doesn't remember. The film presents an enigma. Did this even happen? What is interesting about this film that we get to see the story that the man tells the woman. Are they actually memory of fantasy that never happened? As Chico Mark once said, who you gonna believe, me or your own eyes? How to get attention. What if that attracts our attention? Shine a line up, jump up and down, yell and set a firework. It is easy to attract attention. You just have to do something to stand out. And you read this notice, the space you are in, that stand out for you. What calls to you? As a filmmaker, this is something to keep at in the back of your mind. Motion, contrast, brightness, point at, and loudness at attract attention. Another way of directing attention can be done by trying another experiment. Next time you are in a group of people, casually look up. Even if there is nothing but sky above you, you will be surprised at how many people look up to see what are you looking at. You have a direction direct their attention. Strong contrast, subtle contrast, graduate contrast. Strong contrast attract attention. We can become aware of subtle change, but it changes are too gradually that we might not notice them. The map is not the territory. The fact that the map is not the territory sounds pretty obvious, but what is not so obvious in the fact that we really never dealt with directly with the territory. All of our experience of the world is through our map of it. Our map represents the world using a map, sound, word, and symbol. In other words, sensory information. One of the functions of our brain is to act as a filter to protect us from information overload. If the brain didn't have this filter process, we will be continually overwhelmed with a bombard of sensation. This filtering process organizes information into patterns. Humans constantly seek patterns and notice even small change to pattern. We dealt with an overwhelming amount of information and agonizing this information into pattern in a way for us to process it. The most obvious patterns are visually designed, but we are aware of the pattern of weather. The way people speak, music pattern, traffic pattern are everywhere, telling a story, organization, information into a pattern. Neurolinguistic programming is the study of how language programs our mind. Language is kind of like a software for our brain. According to neurolinguistic program, theory, we constantly delete, generalize, and distort the information we receive about words so that our brain doesn't go into overload. But what is not so obvious the fact that we really never deal directly with the territory. All of our experience of the world is through our map of it. Our map represents the world using image, sound, word, and symbol, in other words, sensory information. One of these functions for our brain is to act as a filter to protect us from information overload. If the brain didn't have the filtering process, we would be continually overwhelmed with a bombardment of sensation. This filtering processing organizes information into patterns. Humans constantly seek pattern and notice even small changes to the pattern. We deal with overwhelming amount of information and organizing this information into pattern in a way for us to process it. The most obvious patterns are visual design, but we are aware of the pattern of weather, the way people speak, music, pattern, traffic pattern. Patterns are everywhere, telling a story and organizing information into a pattern. Neuro-linguistic programming is to study how language programs our mind. Language is a kind of like the software for our brains. According to neuro-linguistic programming theory, we continually delete, generalize, and distort the information we receive about the world so that our brain don't go into overload. In other words, we don't pay attention to a lot of information we are exposed to. We delete it. We also rely on stereotypes and clinch we generalize. We distort the thing that doesn't fit into our worldwide. In many ways, we are cognitive misery forever trying to conserve our cognitive energy. Given our finite ability to process information, we often adopt strategy of the principal road for simplifying complex problems. We mindlessly accept of a conclusion or preparation not for any good reason, but because it's accompanied by a simple persuasion device. According to the information processing models, our persuasive message must successfully pass through a series of stages. First, the message must attack the recipient attention. Ignore the message will have little persuasive impact. Second, the argument in the message must be understood and comprehended. Third, the recipient must learn the argument continue in the message and come to accept them as true. The task of advertiser and other persuaders is to teach argument supportive of the cause, so that this argument will come easily to mind at the appropriate time and place. Finally, the recipient of the message act of the learned knowledge when there is incentive to do so. A persuasive message is learned, accepted, and acted upon as it's willing to do so. Selective attention. Try this expression and it will really make you aware of how selective our attention is. The next time that you are in a restaurant, close your eye and just listen. Don't pay attention to any specific sound, but just let your attention heal off of the different sound. There will probably be many kind of voice, some loud, some whispering. There will be the sound of glass clicking, shuffling, tapping on the plate. Depending on the type of restaurant, you might hear pot and pan crashing in the kitchen or the chef yelling out of order. There might be different kind of music. There might be nature sound of like dog barking. All of this you tune out when you listen to someone speaking to you at your table. A tape recorder doesn't different what it records. Early in the filmmaking career, I record some sound for a film. I was surprised to find not only the sound that I want to record, but thousands more of the microphone pick it up. It includes car sound, dog barking that we were more than half of a mile away. I didn't hear this when I was recording or bring to note of this unwanted voice. But equipment like camera and microphone do not have this selection process. The recorders does not know what to find important. That is why we need to be able to see and listen carefully, so we know what we are presenting to our audience. We need to tune our sensitivity to light and sound. Our attention is very question and commodity. According to Tony Robbins, the motivational coach, what we pay attention to affect the quality of our life. This is crucial information for filmmaker. Our ability to pay attention is affected by many factors such as fatigue, interest, state of mind, and expectation. When we multitask, we feel like we are accomplishing a great deal of our work. What we are really doing is juggling or shifting attention very quickly between multiple items. This is why people driving with cell phone are more likely to have accidents than the other drivers. We think that we are paying attention, but when in reality our attention is split, our mind can deceive us very easily. Keep attention. Showing the audience new and unexpected things will keep your audience attention. This will work for a while, but if you have ever been in a great art museum, you have probably experienced that after a while you reach burnout. Narrative questions about something we care about are what keep the audience attention, but you must remember to give them a rest once in a while. The best cure for attention burnout is change. Create a change or pace of scenery. Take them someplace new. Scraptable take the Sultan to a mythical place of fooding monster. Keep structural invisible. Trick of attention. We have seen that we want to keep the audience lost in the story, so we work at the structural level. How do we keep the structural invisible? Well, luckily, filmmakers have evolved a way to do this called classically continuous editing style. We will look entertain artists have to deal with the same issue only differently, and they can shed a lot of insight of the problem of directing audience attention. First, let's look at the art of ventriloquism. In chapter 1, we said the story is like a ventriloquism. The film story appears to tell itself without anyone having to tell it. There are certain tricks involved to achieve this. Let's look what Virgilius can offer us. So, what does the director keep the structure invisible? The director is like a ventriloquism. Ventriloquism uses three techniques. First, they create a contrast in voice between themselves and the dummy. I speak normally and you talk funny. Second, when the dummy speaks, he doesn't move his mouth. He throws his voice in somewhere else. Actually, you just talk with your lips almost closed with your tongue pressed against your lower teeth. And third, they make the dummy lips move when they want the dummy to talk. This is like the audience. For example, when I want to talk to you, I will move your lips and the audience will watch you. Are you calling me a dummy? I have a fan figure. This is sort of a verticalist figure. Oh, one more thing. They direct the audience attention to the fat figure by looking at him and engage him with the he's real. Please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. The ventriloquists bring a character to life by giving an emotion and acting as if the dummy, fan figure. It's real. So the directing involves two aspects. First is directing attention to the fan figure when he speaks. Second, the ventriloquist misdirect your attention by keeping it away from himself or herself. Of course, we know that the ventriloquist is doing all the talking, but when the figures speak, he directs you where to look. Remember, by speaking metaphor, show the audience one thing at a time. The conscious mind can only pay attention to one thing at a time. Note that I said a conscious mind. Our conscious mind is just the tip of the iceberg. Most of our perceptual organization happen with the automatic nervous system or before entering conscious attention. In other words, it happens as the part of the iceberg that you cannot see. A director directs the audience attention to an arrangement of the presentation of the image and sound of the film. First, you must capture the audience attention and then you must protect it from distraction. In this regard, a director is like a hypnosis. It is not under the viewer's conscious control. When a film is presented clearly and dramatically, the conscious mind is following the story. However, our conscious mind is picking up all this kind of information outside the edge of our awareness. This subtle influence can affect how the audience think and feel, as the structural element can perform the function. As a quick example, the same skin in the shadow versus direct sunlight can have a very different feel. Milton Erickson meets Bugs Bunny. Never heard of him? Milton Erickson was always fascinated by make people think. There is a great story from Milton's childhood that illustrates his insatiable curiosity. One snowy morning, he got up early, and while walking to school, the young Milton did an experiment. He began to walk very wavy path in the snow, zigzag back and forth, even though it's obvious that the pace was fairly straight. When he returned in the afternoon, to his amusement, he found out people had followed his lead. These footsteps in the snow followed his rather than simply direct path. It was hard to resist Milton did. He grew up to become the world's leader of medical hypnosis. Healing is breaking off unhealthy limits to learn a childhood. In Uncommon Therapy, Milton Erickson showed that most people get stuck at the left junctures. These are a turning point from one life stage to another. The most common reason for getting stuck is fear from an earlier trauma. This fear has been learned and inappropriate generalized to other situations. Remember, we delete, destroy, generalize or map of a word. This is where we often encourage film check character when they are ripe for a change. In a story, the hypnotist what if is present as a two. The waiter is a masterful liar, offering supporting detail to flesh out believable world in which the action takes place. The writer third is not a story, but rather an emotion. Given this imaginary situation, this is how people will truly feel and behave. This hypothetical what-if question sets up unconscious search whereby the audience unconscious seek the answer from what is known of the story. So far, if you don't continually ask highly charged questions, the audience will generate their own. You don't want them thinking, when is something going to happen? Or why I'm watching this? You want to put the audience in anxious state of suspense. Anxiety usually comes from the unknown. The viewer finds the answer to the question rise by watching the film and thus divert attention from their lack of knowledge. Erickson technique. So how does the Milton do it? What secret does he know? In order to understand some of the Erickson technique, I'm going to allow Bugs Bunny to demonstrate them for us. We would usually find Bugs minding his own business when the hunter Elmer Fudd would arrive with saying, "Be very quiet, I'm hunting rabbits." Bug wonders nonchalantly over the Elmer, who is observantly involved in his thoughts of painting his shotgun down the rabbit hole. Bug inquires, what do you up, Doc? To which Elmer answers, "I'm hunting rabbits." Bug approaches to ask the series of questions with obvious answer. Does he have a gray coat like this and a fluffy tail like this and long ear like this? Elmer answered yes to his question and getting more excited by the minute. Then Beck casually revealed, "I ain't seen him," and walked away. Then something very interesting happened. Elmer shakes himself as he's walking up the trance and stated, "That was the rabbit!" The chasing on. Let's look at the Bug was doing as he hypnotized Elmer. The first thing he does is utilize what the person over. Bug accepts that Elmer is hunting a rabbit. That doesn't deter him. In fact, he used to accomplish his second objective. Bug depositates Elmer continuously. In other words, the fact that the prey walked up to the hunter to ask what he was doing is not normal state of affair. It's very confusing. So Bug confused Elmer. In order not to confuse, you have to go internal and make sense of the intonation. Now he is primed and ready to go in the trace. Then Bug asks a serious question, creating a yes set. There are obvious questions that all the result is a yes. Question set of unconscious search in the brain goes to the memory to try to find the answer. This leads the person internally deeper into a trance stage. It was really surprised the first time I watched this cartoon after leaving about Milton Erickson. My superiors were confirmed when Elmer has to shake himself out of his trance. This is not the only time Bug hypnotized someone. In Waukene Wabbit, Bug is stranded out of Iceland with 2 Viper victims. When a ship finally arrives, he performs the ritual of sending them off, giving them life, saying a bon voyage, and shaking their hand. At the last time, he performed a switch and get a ship and himself, leaving them stranded. A final example is from a classic cartoon, Rabbit Seasoning. Bugs of Daffy Duck agree whether it's duck season or rabbit season. The argument goes back and forth while Elmer waits impatiently. After Daffy states it is a rabbit season, Bugs simply agrees, "Rabbit season," without realizing what has happened. Daffy delights, "Duck season, shoot him!" And Elmer does. Daffy was locked into the pattern of saying the opposite of the Bug. So when the bug is reached, say Daffy didn't realize the implication must is charging. Other erection techniques involve how to utilize embed question, persuasion, and implication. We have seen the embed question do exactly what our narrative question do. The audience seeks to find answer. A preconception is something that is assumed beforehand at the beginning of the course of action. Story continually roll out all kind of presumption. If you were to take a trip on a ship, you have already presumed that the ship will float and move across the water to where you want to go. Erection may have structured a perception like this. After you read the next sentence, you might notice change in your body. This sentence presumes that you will read the next section. It also leaves that you might experience in your body very open-ended. You might have feel heavy, light, cold, warm. In this way of response you provide will acceptance of the proof of tolerance. Presumption led us to think in a certain way. However, presumptions are not always true. It's a powerful tool to mislead or surprise an audience. Implication involve a listening arriving in conclusion, although the facts have not been directly stated. Many verbally arguments use implication to say there may other ways to be unaccepted to state it directly. It's a great way to make your character dialogue more believable, rather than having them to state the obvious implication and sarcasm are much more fun. Milton used all this type of technique for a reason. If he states something directly, then his patient might often resist. Just like Buck, Milton slept right under the resistance. Scarcebel bypassed the Sultan defense with her story, and now he is trusting a woman again. I have a story that I am working on that some people might find it mildly offensive. I got around this by having a main character tell the story to the other character in the story. The other characters in the story think that the main character is crazy. I put the potential objection right away into the story. This deflects anyone object to the story because it's just a rambling of a crazy person. It also adds a fun element to the story. Milton understood the value of the story in people's life and how to structure them to be very persuasive. He was a master of metaphor and story that he told at his patient to help them through a stage in their life where they were stuck. Our movie story have to have interest by creating metaphor about real human problems that the audience can identify with. I don't know if you noticed, but we used an erection technique in the last chapter. It is now as accessing early learning. I remind you of the time you learned to walk and ride a bike. Directing the storyboard feel overwhelming at first, but reminding you at something that you had to learn when you were young, but were able to accomplish, provide a positive framework to learn and grow rather than feeling overwhelmed and helpless. The power of suggestion. So how is director like a hypnosis? Some things is like stronger not to show it all, but rather suggestion it. The hypnotist know how much the mind can create if it is offended interesting suggestion. Much modern horror filmmaking seem to have forgotten this fact. There are two approaches in creating a horror movie film. There are those who show all the gory detail and those doesn't. The second group instead choose to suggest what might happen and let the audience imagine feel all of the detail. Each type has has first, but I think that the kind of that use the audience imagination can be more powerful because you are utilizing their fear. They will take your clues and find the blank themselves for their own personal experience and association. This will make it more meaningful for them and utilizing the hypnotical technique. For example, let's say the audience is presented with a scene of a dark cave. They want to know what is in the cave. Well, at this point, it could be anything. It is filled with the fear of an unknown. The minute that we show that the cave is filled with the bats, the archetypical person who has imagined it filled with a scary spider lose some of their fear. Imagined fear can be worse than a real fear. That is the power of the movie. There is also an economic benefit to suggestion. You don't need to create physical scene when you can suggest them. The audience mind will give you cash of thousands. The Disney film Bambi had an incredible fast for us, yet when you look at the actual shot of the film, 98% of them are in close-up. I only know or 2 or 3 long shots of the forest. It will all create in the mind of the viewer just the power of suggestion. Sound can be very suggestive. The use of the sound is what brings life to a film. Disney Bambi takes man's presence in the forest with 3 musical chords. And Spike Lee do this the right thing. He used flashing light and sound of the helicopter to save his film budget to the cost of a real helicopter. Francis Ford Apocalypse Now beach attack scene won't have been the same without showing a real helicopter. There are a time or place for something, included over-budget helicopter. The suggestive power of image is beyond word. Considering this story about 2 hatch girls, Mary and Jane, one day, Mary placed a dime on her plate as a deco to entice tip from her customer, and Jane followed suit, but instead she put a quarter on her. 2 hours later, Jane collected 2.5 more tips than her partner. She used salesmanship. She knew that sometimes a picture symbol, in the case of silver coins, speaks more eloquently than a word, and more effectively. So before we burn out your attention, let's see what happened with the Scarab. Scarab finished drawing. She looked up at the Sultan and held up the drawing. The Sultan watched intensely, made clothes costly, go and stay thereof. Scarab continued her thankless task. Slam! Great state. Go and stand before the judge. Judge Big Pond, what were you thinking? Did you want to make the dragon destroy us all? Did you see any dragon? Silence, my court. He looked up sheepishly at the judge. If you ever catch under, Catchwell sided down again. You'll face the hangman. You two stutch understand. Go and sit, shut the heart, yes. The judge left the court. Stick said in a hurry, whew. Go grab Sticks and pull him out with him. MacDonald looked out of his chair and go Scott cut Capel sideways spyglass. Aha! There is going to be a ball. I bet she'll be there. We're going dancing. Over there? Do you remember what the judge says? He said if they catch us, what could possibly go wrong? We could be invited to a necktie party. We'll go race that to see Clover again. Do you want him to? He has gone mad. In this new plan to go to party, hopefully a fairy and Nia decide based on how things turn out. How the brain organize information. Gestalt. Gestalt. Ooh. What is Gestalt? Something you say when someone sneezes. Gestalt is a German word that means form of shape. It is organized whole that is more than just one sum of a part. Gestalt principle describe how our mind organize or experience. For example, the mind grows things that are similar or close together. The mind pick out something to look out and everywhere else fade into the background. When we read, we see each word and cluster of a word. What we don't notice is that the rays of the page receives our awareness. It's like a flashlight shine on the word and we read them. The way to use our speaking metaphor of telling one thing at a time is through Gestalt principle. Gestalt principle work at every level of movie making, including perception of image, comprehension, a plot, grasp of theme, and even sound. A key concept of Gestalt perception is that mind tends to fill the blank. This power of suggestion a filmmaker's grasp early. The mind feels in the bag it asks. I hope you noticed there were missing letters in the previous heading. If you didn't mind, take a look care of them for you. Our minds seek for closure. If you hear a familiar music theme or pretty with the last time cut off, we will feel the missing piece ourselves. Shave and haircut. The minds want to hear the last phrase of complete the rhyme 2 beats. Visually, if part of the figure are out, there will be a tension us that want to close the shape. We tend to see complete figure when we close up and head of a film we assume that is complete to a body and not disembodied.